everyone. May I now request our beloved Dean, Dr. N.K. Skorar, sir, to escort today's Chief Speaker and Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor K.C. Virendra. Now I request, I take this opportunity to invite the chief guest. May I request our own beloved Dean sir to welcome today's chief speaker, Dr. Senthil Kumar sir. Thank you, sir. And also we have amongst us our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor K.C. Virendra. I request the Dean sir to welcome him also. Thank you, sir. Now I request our Dean sir to address the gathering.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry for the little delay. Technical problem was there in the computer. Respected Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Virendra sir, and respectable our today's speaker, Professor Senthil Kumar Reddy, is a professor and head at the Department of Psychiatry at NIMAS, our prestigious institute in Bengaluru. Sir, just to give a small background, sir, today is the 67th Foundation Day of our Veterinary College. It was started in 25th July 1958. So today, 25th July 2025, we are completing 67 years of our existence. And most of us, including sir and me and some of our faculty here, are product of this college. So we are proud alumni of this college. And we have come up to this level because of our college and our teachers and ethics what we learned from this college. So to commemorate this day in a simple manner, sir, we had a week-long series of lectures. So today, this week-long lecture ends with your great talk on stress management in the academia. So, sir, we have students, veterinary students, third year, fourth year, and PG students, and also we have our faculty from departments, clinical and para and clinical and animal science departments. Sir, we have today, just morning also, just you witnessed some of the students visiting our laboratories, and we had open day for the pre-university school children. Students, so that they can visit our facilities, they can see and get some curiosity, so that they can have some ambition. At least few of them can have ambition that I should become a doctor. So they can see the specimens, biological specimens, animals, so that they can get some kind of inspiration from their visit. So that is the purpose of open day. Generally, NIMAS also does open day, like Indians of Science also does open day. So that's what we wanted to use that kind of exposure to the students. And sir, my acquaintance with you, I think, goes back to just 3 or 4 months back. Myself and Dr. Kalmat, we were invited for one of your academic counseling session for students. So nowadays, I think the tendency of suicide, depression, all increasing among the people, particularly among the students. So NIMAS has a project on that. So there are different models of counseling and stress management for different category of people like faculty, students. And we were invited to attend that workshop. And that day only I was introduced to Professor Senthil Kumar. So then I thought that I think he will be the right person to address some of us, including our faculty and students. And I take welcome you, sir, and great to listen to you on this topic, which is very, very relevant for today's atmosphere. So without taking much time, sir, I think I once more thank our Vice Chancellor for spending this time. And he is also very interested to listen to this topic, because as a Vice Chancellor, I think he also may undergo a lot of stress in management and handling different scenarios, different people. So this is the our part of our life. So without taking much time, I request you to take the mic. Stage is yours. I request Ranjan to give just his brief biodata of Dr. Senthil Kumar.
We have a special person amongst us who will be registered and is an expert in psychiatry and mental health. Now, very often, now in these days, the practice in veterinary science, it's increasing and growing. At the same time, the peer pressure, practice pressure, socio-economic pressure is also increasing. Because recently, last week, one of the senior students of Veterinary College, Bengaluru, he lost his life, had to take his life on his own. So the pressure is always there. So we are very happy that you're here, sir. Now, Dr. V. Senthil Kumar Reddy is a professor and head of emergency psychiatry and acute care service at the Department of Psychiatry in HANS, Bangalore. He's an alumnus of HANS with more than 2 decades of experience in the field of psychiatry. Dr. Reddy expanded his skills by gaining extensive clinical and teaching experience over 5 years in Australia, which included working as a consultant psychiatrist and adjunct lecturer at Monash University in Australia. Since 2010, he has been a faculty member at the Department of Psychiatry, NIMADS. Dr. Reddy's commitment to mental health extends beyond his clinical duties. He is an NIH Fogarty Fellow from the University of Florida, 2016. He has served as a technical committee member for the National Suicide Prevention Strategy released by the Government of India in 2022 and a member of NMC National Task Force on Mental Health and Well-being of Medical Students. His expertise in suicide prevention is well recognized, having actively engaged in related teaching, training and research for over 15 years. With a passion for community-based suicide prevention, Dr. Reddy has proactively been involved in community engagement awareness programs and media sensitization. Aligning to the same, he currently leads the NIMHANS local gatekeeper training program initiated in 2014. It has successfully trained over 10,000 individuals from various sectors, including government, armed forces, law enforcement, media, corporations, academic institutions, NGOs and community organizations, youth volunteers, lay counselors, and frontline health personnel. In addition, he coordinates suicide prevention training within the National Mental Health Program, Ayushman Bharat, and the National Telemanas Initiative coordinated via NIMADS. He is an accomplished researcher focusing on epidemiological, clinical, and pathophysiological correlates of suicidality in various clinical populations, as well as scalable suicide prevention strategies. He is also actively involved in research on catatonia, emergency psychiatry and neuropsychiatry. A distinguished author, he has contributed to over 70 publications, including approximately 60 articles in PubMed Index international and national journals, amassing over 650 citations. He has also authored several book chapters and edited 4 books, making significant contributions to the field of psychiatry. So, sir, we are very happy to have you here. We will be looking forward for your lectures. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Am I audible? Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And first of all, I'd like to thank the Vice Chancellor, the Vice Chancellor as well as the Dean, sir, for having given me this opportunity to try and discuss some of the aspects that probably affect us all. So, I just thought we'll just, given that in a lot of ways, what is taken up in the field of veterinary medicine is pretty much very similar in a sense to human physiology and medicine as well. There are a lot of similarities and overlaps that apply to a variety of not just the field of veterinary science and human science, but also in terms of how we end up reaching these courses. And it also extends to a lot of other aspects of our lives. So, I think the issue of what Dr. Sir had requested me was to try and see if I could try and provide some clarity on, of the aspect and an understanding of the aspect of stress. More importantly, how to manage it. I think all of us face stress. It might be a very stressful day for Dr. Sir. A lot of you will be probably hearing a lot of lectures, you're probably tired and stressed out after listening to so many days. I can understand that. I was a student myself, aspiring doctor myself, and so we all have gone through stages. But most of you also would probably recognize that in each stage you experience different kinds of stress. So I think it's very important to remember that when we talk about stress, it's something that definitely is being talked about a lot. So what do most people feel? Do you feel that stress is more now than it was before in your personal experience? Or is it that there isn't much of a change really? It is that you feel more stressed. What is it? Can anyone suggest any perspectives of what they think is going on? So there's no right or wrong answer to this, but they are the individual perspectives. But all of this is something that we individually experience. So if I were to say that it's not really so much so that stress has increased, it is just the fact that probably people are talking more about stress. How many of you feel that that would be probably right? Not many? Okay. Right. So is it that the stress has increased? Has COVID brought on stress? COVID wasn't very stressful. So I can remember myself, it was very demanding. I had just, we'd been working at demands, and as doctors we were required to be on the front line, attend to patients. We ourselves weren't sure what's happening. We were learning during COVID times. It was extremely stressful. We were completely in a different environment. Everything was shut, everything was closed. We had to do things, we had to change our methods of practice very differently. And wearing PPE, I know I just went to the PPE lab, it was fabulous. And it's an amazing lab here that we have. And so these PPEs used there, but using it morning to evening, wearing it all the time was a very novel experience that some of us had. And so it was something that was extremely disruptive for a lot of us. So I think when we look at the meaning of stress and we try and understand that, I think as myself, like I said, having traveled through the stages of school, our own entrance exam preparation, college times, I wonder whether indeed there were aspects that I struggled, and I'm pretty sure I did. And there was a lot of stress. And often what happens is, as most of you would have experienced, when you come here in college, such as the veterinary college that you're in right now, you might have been extremely good in your respective academic institutions in school, but suddenly you are, amongst the best of the best in a top end college, right? So you suddenly become not necessarily the topper, but you're probably average, better than average, and there's a relative difference between them. You also come from different backgrounds. Everybody is not from the same place. Everybody is not from the same part of the country. And suddenly things are very different. You're also in a different environment. You're not at home. You're in college. The college environment is different. Some people make day scholars, a lot of people make hostel. Is there a hostel facility here? How many of you are staying in hostel? Most of you.
Because the food is also very different from what we are used to, right? So I think it's important to understand that it's something that we have all encountered. Some may make some adjustments to the type of food. Some may come up with different ways in which they would just not eat mess food, they would eat something else outside. Somebody may come up with ideas of making a friend who's a local and going to their house very often, making sure their mother feeds them, come up with different sort of strategies to help come together and, sort of go out together, go eat together, or, identify ways in which you explore different kinds of food. So I'm trying to highlight that a lot of these things are probably happening. Now, a lot of people, everybody may not be necessarily doing it in the same way, and everybody may not necessarily be doing it. And that is where the problem comes. And then there's a lot of expectations that we put on ourselves. So, like I said, stress, the issue of stress is the fact that, it has its sort of meanings from a medical, social, and psychological perspective, right? So when we talk about, say, from a medical standpoint, when we talk about stress, we also need to remember stress is not a bad thing. There is an element to stress, and I'll come to that later. But physiologically, when we talk about from a medical perspective, there are changes to all aspects of our bodily function in the context of stress. Right? Am I audible? Yeah. Okay. In case I'm not, just let me know. Because I'll sometimes just move my head around and I might not be very audible. So, coming back to what I was talking about medical stress, the issue in the context of medicine is the fact that, as all of you know, when there is extreme stress bodily, it leads to a lot of bodily function changes. Those are induced by a lot of hormones, by a lot of drugs, neurotransmitters, changes to blood pressure, changes to heart rate, everything, right? Often that's actually adaptive. It's meant to actually improve a person's ability to function in a stressful environment. And so the issue is about what happens when chronic stress sets in. I'll get to that as well. When we talk about social, we're talking about stress from a social perspective. So from a sociological, how is this highlighting that? Is stress more common now? There is a meaning to stress that people now use in the social setting, which probably wasn't the same as it was 20 years ago or 25 years ago when people talked about stress. So the meaning of stress in society, what do people mean by stress in society, right? And that's something that needs to be looked at and understood, that it has a completely different meaning when people talk about it in that sense. Right? So Bangalore is very famous for its traffic or lack of traffic movement, right? So now that could have a social perspective, that could have a medical perspective, and then that could have also psychological perspective. When we talk about psychological, we're talking about how stress mentally can affect us, right? How it induces changes to our mental state, and it can actually make us more easily irritable, it can make us angry, it can make us anxious, it can make us feel very, very low. There are a lot of, sort of experiences of emotions that we can, contextualize to stress. So, like I said, when we talk about acute, so when we look at types of stress, there are acute stress, and that's the typical ones that happen to most of us in the context of exams, some high pressure interviews, or some sort of very specific time, some situation, and it could activate us. Suddenly adrenaline starts kicking in, heart rate goes up, your brain starts releasing neurotransmitters that help us focus, improve our attention, concentration, helps us become more singularly focused. So that sort of stress is more adaptive. And that stress is not a bad stress, but it's something that's transient, it's present for the period of time and then sort of wanes off again, right? And that can be episodic, right? But the episodic acute stress is a problem when it comes to frequently, to consistently. So for example, like I said about the road traffic in Bangalore, right? So for me staying in Dairy Circle or working in Dairy Circle and probably traveling, I was inquiring with everyone here, whoever comes here, because Hebbal is what I hear about in the context of the worst traffic situation. So, the fact that I was very curious to understand how each of you handle that on a day-to-day basis, right? So that would probably come under acute stress episodic, because you may not necessarily have to travel every day, but whenever you travel, it's problematic, right? When you come to chronic stress, it's something that's chronically there. Problem with chronic stress is it actually causes maladaptive changes to a lot of our bodily functions and our bodily function. So it can actually affect our heart rate, it can affect our ability, glycemic control or the sugar control. It can actually affect how, your brain neurotransmitter systems are actually working, which can actually lead to overall changes in the bodily function, which can affect our capacity to think, concentrate, focus, make us feel more disconcerted by the whole, overwhelming state which might be present, which otherwise we may have well tolerated. So if you look at the impact, it actually has both psychological, mental health as well as physical health aspects, and I think that's very, very important to remember. And that automatically translates to a lot of social isolation. So it can lead to problems in your interpersonal space. It can lead to problems with more levels of social isolation. It can make you more easily frustrated. It also makes us feel less of ourselves, right? And I think it's very, very important that
we actually look at understanding also in the context of same, that often seeking help for that can become a problem in some of these questions. So when we come to stress academically, when we talk about that, the main issue that I think is very, very relevant is what has been our prior experience before coming into a higher academic institution. Right? A lot of people may have faced it in school, entrance exam times, right? But into a college setting is very, very different type of stress. And it applies to faculty as well. Suddenly getting a faculty position or becoming a teacher in a college where you aspire, where you study, you aspire to study, it's not easy. It can be overwhelming. And then the constant challenge of facing the day-to-day challenges, while you're pursuing your degrees or your teachers, it can be very, very stressful. And there could be a lot of experiences that you've had, in your personal life that have actually influenced your impact your stress levels in the academic settings. There's a lot of aspects that people worry about because they need high performance, high achievements. So constantly there is a focus on what people have on what will happen after my academic, what's the next thing. And again, because there is a lot of demand, there's a lot of expectation of from individuals, they actually, rather than focus on what's happening now, start worrying more about the future and future lives and start expending a lot of energy on that. That leads to a lot of escalated chronic stress circumstances. Like I said, competitiveness is always there, and you find that it's not just going with your peers, even going forward, you find that your friends, colleagues, etc., many people who are competing for same higher positions that you may be expecting as well. And the interaction with mentors, so now that's may not necessarily every day, but often you find your seniors, and you find people in other batches, and you find they become your mentors because they've gone through the same thing you were studying over there. Right? And often that is not something that's fostered or generally developed. Then that can actually, the upward mentorship, affect and reduce stress. And how the academic education environment is supportive, is it talking about such things, and encourage people to open up, encourage people to express their difficulties, to offer opportunities for all of you to seek assistance when you need it. This is something that often a lot of education institutions have. Today's talk in a way shows the commitment of this college to addressing this aspect of issue and stress, and actually encouraging people to say, come, we need to discuss this and work on this together. And it's not something that the educational institution needs to really necessarily do, but I think it makes a lot of difference to everybody who's in the educational institution, like in this college, right? And so I think it's very, very important. Apart from that, like financially, when there are colleges and fees and personal aspects of finances that can actually contribute to a lot of stress as well. So I think one of the things is, at an individual level, what are the things that influence stress? I think it's very, very important to remember, because a lot of this is influenced by our own personal experience. That's why I said stress is very individualized. Now, I thought the best way to convey this would be to try and show you sort of a word cloud, right? And this is called a sort of bias that we carry with ourselves based on our own experiences across all these domains. So we may have certain stereotypes, certain expectations, certain prejudices, certain experiences that have been extremely unfair to us, our own beliefs, our behavioral patterns, right? And what are we, what are our preferences? Our own gender influences a lot of our own, perspective on stress, right? And then about society, our own expectations, societal expectations from us, and sometimes it's about whether these are overt or implicit as well, conveyed under the radar rather than explicit, and in fact that how we react to it, right? So I think it's very, very important to remember that all these aspects constitute our perspective on stress. So each of you would have a very different experience, very different. If I were to ask each of you and give you this question, each of these words and what it means to you, you would get many different answers. And the likelihood of it being very similar is likely to be very low. Right? So it's very important to remember that it's in a personal experience, stress. It's not something that, while everybody may experience it, your experience of stress may be very different from somebody else's. Right? And this comes to academics. Right? And that's when adolescents, starting with adolescents, and a lot of peer pressure. How does peer pressure stem? It stems from the fact that you've got adolescents, a period of time where there's a lot of change, physiologically, psychologically that's happening, you're evolving into a young adult, you have your own expectations, you think about what the future holds for you, you have ideas about yourself, you have ideas about how you wish to be a separate person, you're not really, you become an independent adult, whether that's possible, whether those attitudes are driven by school, your personal environment, and whether we would change that will occur. Right? These attitudes and differences and things are aspects that actually impact on the college life. I think it's very important to remember that these are very, very crucial areas that actually influence attitudes in the college setting as well. So I think I just thought it's very easy to sort of in the academic setting say what are the sources. Right? All of you would probably say time management could be a problem, or financial problem in terms of affordability of the course. Fear of failure is something that's universal to all of us. Right? There's an excessive workload. I don't think anybody in college any of you would say that my course is simple, or there is a very light, easy course. I personally would never say that about my course, right? Whether it's an undergrad or postgrad. So being a teacher myself, I know exactly how that's very demanding. Right? But there's also a sense of being isolated, being in a crowd, but being alone, as they call it, and actually not being able to develop good amount of relationships. And the loneliness that I was mentioning. Right? So when we talk about it, I think it's about the most crucial aspect is about increasing the awareness about how the impact or what the impact could be of the whole stress in the academic system, and actually breaking barriers in terms of the stigma. So a lot of people think that talking about stress or complaining that they're overwhelmed by stress actually might be something seen as a weakness. It might be deemed that people brush it aside and say, look, come on, there's nothing to feel like this. So people are scared and hesitate to talk about it because they feel that just saying that makes them look weak, or people dismiss them. That makes them very difficult for them to convey their problems, share their problems with others. And people might say, even when they're sharing their problems, people might say, you've got so many good things happening in your life. Right? It was just really mentioned somebody lost their life, unfortunately, just recently in college. A lot of times they may have reached out for help. They may have asked for help in various ways from different people. It's just that it wasn't properly understood or recognized. And under-recognition is a major problem. So it's not about just being supportive, it's actually understanding, knowing what support can mean, and being of help. Right? It's not saying that you help people by giving them solutions, giving them answers, but actually helping them in a manner by being present for them, being available for them, just listening to them. And that can make a huge difference. And actually taking away the stigma. Because when we talk about the fact that we say that we are anxious, we're worried, have an anxiety problem, or depression, people are again thought to be weak. Depression or depressive disorder is actually an illness. It's actually related to both, and it's associated with poor outcomes overall, not necessarily directly by depression, but it impacts cardiac health, it affects mortality, So it's an independent risk factor for actually early death as well. Not just by suicide, but by way of various other physiological causes as well. So I think it's very important to remember that when we talk about the universal intervention, we're talking about the fact that we're talking about things like starting early, so that when we discuss about life skills education or what is life skills education, positive mental health, we're talking about actually how can we help young people work on methods in which we can tolerate, manage setbacks. So we're not saying everything is completely good. But when a problem occurs in your life, it's about learning how to cope with that problem, learn how to solve that problem, overcome that problem. Either not by yourself, it may be about reaching out for help and working together and getting help from assistance from others to overcome that problem and learn from that problem so that that's something that we can address next time in a better way, so that it doesn't hold you back, right? And actually creating more support in the community and more systems. So a lot of times we will not be comfortable talking to family about it. So a lot of us may be worried about what our future holds. But we feel like telling our family may actually make them worried, and we don't want to trouble them, and we don't want to bother them, and so we actually don't disclose that. A lot of times if we talk about it with our friends, again they make fun of, told again things like a common thing that I've heard from a lot of not just young people, is the fact that when I tried to share my problem, they said, look, there's so many good things happening in your life. Think about that other poor person on the road who's got nothing. You've got this, that, despite this, why you feeling like this? You shouldn't feel like this. So people have made feel guilty about feeling sad, depressed, anxious, when there's actually, that's an internal experience that they're having without their, without their own reasoning. They cannot understand what's happening, right? They're just trying to share that, which is actually being discussed. I think it's about actually making sure that those supports are there in the community, to have systems in the academic environment that encourage people to come out and talk to them. So often they're peer group volunteers. These are people who are there, just available to listen to others without any judgment, without any without any other, without ridiculing them, and then working out what can be the best way to move forward in those sorts of things. Right? Do you have an alumni association? Does the alumni association ever come in and in any way get involved in any of these aspects? The reason I say that is often the best people who can help all of us when we are in the first year of the course is the people who've gone through that course and more recently. Right? Somebody like me coming, who's, I graduated from my finished my post-graduation 22 years ago, 23 years ago, right? And if I talk to somebody who's now postgraduate and I'm their teacher and their professor for them, they feel that I have no idea what is their experience. But somebody who's graduated just a year or 2 years ago is a much better place to tell them, look, this is what the scenario is. This is what you need to do to help yourself. These are the problems. That teacher sent them, he's troublesome. Stay away from him. Correct? Or the fact that he's got his own oddities, idiosyncrasies, right? This teacher has got this thing. So if you do it like this, they prefer it like this. So you learn not just about their teaching methods. So some will say, these classes are very good, but these classes are something that you can avoid, right? They can even help you prioritize how you focus on your academics. And people who recently pass out are finding, will be better placed to tell you even other sources. Now with technology, I don't think a lot of you depend on, methods of learning that we may have relied on in our time because we didn't have access to a lot of what exists now. Everything's on the fingertips, but there's also an information overload. Right? That's why we have, now all of you have started to explore AI. How many of you using Copilot and Gemini and all? Yeah, many. So summarizing starts. Now, summarizing, the problem with summarizing it stops, it stops us from reading in depth and learning anything in depth. Right? It's a shortcut. YouTube Shorts, Insta Reels, etc. Now these are all introduced because our attention spans are getting more and more. restricted, right? Now, again, your immediate, peers and people who are alumni who are passed out more recently, the ones who are going to be best pleased. They are the ones who can also support you unconditionally, right? So I think if the college evolves those systems, and I think that's what I'm talking about. This applies not to your college, but every college, my own place, other colleges as well. So I think it's very important to enhance those resources. Everybody's gone through different stages, everybody's gone through setbacks, and I think everybody has their own method. So if you're given a menu of different options about what are those solutions, it's easier for you to identify one that works for you from that menu and use that to yourself. Okay? So that's what I mean by saying accessibility to various services and enhancing the resources. The early identification is what I was talking about is the fact that the people who are there, peer people, peer group people who are any amongst of, say, your contemporaries, who actually identify the early warning signs of distress, as we call it. We call it distress rather than excessive stress. Person gets very angry. So suppose you have friends, you have colleagues, your classmates, right? Who suddenly, who was otherwise performing very well, suddenly their scores start dropping. The teacher in that class, the other people in the class may actually notice that change. May not realize that it could be a sign of stress. Right? A person stops attending class suddenly, right? They are otherwise very regular in class, they're very doing their coursework, etc. Assignments. Suddenly they start getting late with submissions, or they miss their submissions, they don't attend classes, they don't attend exams. These are all warning signs. We call them warning signs. Suppose somebody is very socially active on the social media platform, they suddenly stop communicating. They're not there in your group, they're not posting stuff. Right? So they are withdrawing from their social interactions. And that's a warning sign. That's a warning sign for someone who's constantly experiencing depression, anxiety, and extreme distress. And often actually doesn't get picked up. Because we're busy, often we overlook the fact that this could be a sign. We don't think. So most often when deaths by suicide occur, we're very surprised. We feel like, how could this happen? This person never let us know, or this person wasn't the type of person we want to do such a thing, or nothing that indicated the person seemed very happy. So I think very important that these are the sort of softer signs that we need to get sort of familiar with, right? And get to understand that these could be things that will help us identify people early in distress and then get them linked in with necessary services. Right? Substance use is debatable in the sense that a lot of people who use substances may disagree. It's not a question of use of substance or access to substance. It's about overuse, excessive use, use in a manner that actually is counterproductive for that individual, right? So a person who's never used substances suddenly starts using it heavily to a point where they're inebriated all the time, intoxicated all the time, they can't do anything else. That's a problem, right? And so we need to understand that when we are talking about our own friends, colleagues, again, like I said, classmates, etc. And we need to think about whether they are actually in a situation that against is. The problem with substances also is that it also affects our ability to think clearly. So if we are under the influence, whatever is stopping us from acting out in our distress and thinking of ending our life, the substances may inhibit our capacity to think more logically. We may act out on impulses that we otherwise would not have. And that's why it's very, very important that substance use has to be sort of understood and balanced. Right? And a lot of you have heard about, you would have seen Friends, right? Or episode of Friends, the series. It was my time, it was something that was very big. That person, one of them died due to the fact that they were struggling with substance-related problems. Now they probably made generations of youngsters now such a so I'm very happy, and it made my day watching an episode, right? And I enjoyed that. And that person did that despite using substances. He was struggling with those problems, with mood problems, but he made everyone else, happy. So often that paradox we will not be able to understand. That person, unfortunately, lost their life finally by way of the fact that it's not very clear, but it seems that they accidentally overdosed or they were had used it to a point where you know other, right? But the person struggled with it for a while. So what I'm trying to say is that these are things that affect a lot of people around us. We may not be aware, but I think it's important to keep an eye out on it and not again look at it from a judgmental standpoint. It's again addiction as an illness. It needs to be managed as an illness and treated through appropriate methods. That's the only way that one can go down problem with substance addiction. And looking at lifestyle strategies and overall well-being. So those are sort of things that actually we talk about. How do we improve our overall well-being? How do we improve coping? So again, it's about stress management is about not alleviating or removing stress, but coping with stress. That's what I was saying. Living with stress. We've always going to experience stress in our lives. I can assure you that. So the fact that you're all studying right now, next stage is going to be what do you plan to do in the future? How many of you plan to be clinicians? Start your own clinics. How many of you want to take up higher studies? How many of you want to become academicians or researchers? These are very different pathways. A lot of you would have all these options, but you'll have to figure out what you're good at, what you aspire to do, right? And what you can do. So these might be very different. All three might be very, very different. They may not match with one. So I think it's very important that you learn certain skills that helps you address and override these sort of discrepancies that might exist or challenges that might exist. So algorithm called important to urgent, not urgent but not important. Right? This is a strategy now. All of us get mails, we get messages, we get a lot of emails, everything. Right? It's about actually creating the 2x2 model where we actually work out what we should do and how we should prioritize our work on a day-to-day basis. I think very important that there's some problem with that. So we actually look at working out using this algorithm how we can do it or how we get others to do it and how we can and when we should do it and if at all we should do it. The most important thing is we should make sure that part of that time management is not actually postponing things but doing it as possible. Right? And also being very clear with what can be done. A lot of us say yes to everything. We attempt to please our friends, our teachers, our colleagues, etc. And we say so again for our own in a workplace. A lot of times your boss tells you to do a lot of things. You keep saying yes, yes, yes. It becomes very, very difficult to manage it because you don't have the time. So you may not be able to do it. And you have to let the person know, look, it's not, I just don't physically have the time. So it's very important to say no. And that becomes a very crucial aspect. And that's about setting boundaries. And being very focused on what you need to do on a day-to-day basis. So just hold for the slide. Yeah, so we'll just probably while the technical glitches, as we know, keep happening, right? Technical glitches are part of the problem. So yeah, so but this applies here. So I think coming to social support, when we talk about social support, what I'm talking about is everything. When I'm listing these things which are part of social support, so when I talk about family, friends, peers, colleagues, community, what I'm trying to highlight here is that for each set of problems, you may go to one different set of people. It is not that one particular set of group of social support systems will offer you solutions to everything. This is what I want to highlight because this is very commonly stated in a lot of things. But what we may not recognize is that what am I wish to see? What type of support can my family give for what sort of things I need to understand, right? And how can they help me reduce certain stress? Because there could be a lot of things that I don't want to discuss with my family, I don't want my family to know, or I don't think that they will understand my problem. But my friends might understand my problem, right? My friends who might be there, my childhood friends I've grown up with, now they are in business, they are doing something else, so they may not understand what I do in my workplace. the problems I face in my workplace. Because their work, nature of work is completely different. So for that, I need to reach out to colleagues. And when I talk about people who are in my similar situation, but not necessarily working in the same workplace as I, they could be a mental health professional, they could be elsewhere, but working in a completely different environment, and they are my peers. And they could be helping me, I could reach out to them for problems that I might be facing and not be able to discuss with either my colleagues or my friends, because none of them can figure it out or understand what I'm thinking. But a peer might, right? And they may give their viewpoint or their experience or their own understanding of what they feel is happening with, how they address something like that in their work. That you bring to your workplace and solve it, or with your own personal aspirations, right? And the overall community, right? So there could be a lot of times we cannot discuss a lot of things with any of these people because they're known to us personally. And just we feel inhibited, we feel scared, we feel that we may be judged. So sometimes if we have resources in the community who are non-judgmental, like lay counselors, there are places that we can just visit or even call up. Like for example, somebody was just mentioning about telemanas. Right? How many have you heard of this program called the Telemanas program? Have any of you heard about it? Okay, I think, yeah. So it's actually a 5-digit number, 14416. It's pan-India. Anybody can call, and if they're having any difficulties with any problems with stress, anxiety, problems with sleep, problems with low mood, anything, you can just call in, and if you can talk to somebody and figure out what's the problem, they can actually inform you about what to do the best way to see and resolve that problem through getting you linked into resources. They can at times directly help via the phone. Now the good thing about Telemanas is that it actually works with it's sort of set up by the government of India, central government, in a manner that actually, depending on your SIM card, where your SIM card is registered, it will link you into a Telemanas helpline cell, which is actually based out of that SIM card register. So I might be here in Bangalore, my SIM card might be registered in Bengal, because I'm from Bengal, right? When I call it, it will link me to a Bengal Telemanas. I can speak in Bengali. So they will actually try to create a system, the Telemanas that is created to actually become language compatible. So you don't need to be necessarily worried about where you are and whether that person can understand you or whether you can be able to. Right? So I think it's important to recognize that that's where the community's interventions are. Now, everybody talks about this. I'm not going to get into it. But the good thing is, I find that is a lot of people now are focusing a lot on healthy diet and lifestyle, right? Can anybody tell me what regular physical activity means? How many of you have seen these videos? I keep seeing these videos of people working out and exercising and gymming. It's like, a lot of stuff about diet and food. Post-COVID really took on a big mistake. How many of you have come across that? It pops up on my feeds for some odd reason. I don't know whether it's telling me that I should start doing these things, or whether I'm in my algorithm clicking things that making me get these inputs from the stuff. But what I'm saying is a lot of that may not necessarily be accurate, and I think it's very important that we look at balancing our own needs and requirements. So for some people it might be very essential to get a good sleep, right? And I think it's very important to understand what sleep is. That's the restorative sleep. And I'm talking about from a physical standpoint, it's actually demonstrated that chronic insomnia again leads to poor overall health outcomes. Likelihood of you getting diabetes, heart disease, cerebrovascular disease, etc., goes up significantly, including things like dementia, if you actually have poor quality sleep, not just duration of sleep, but poor quality sleep. So what I'm trying to say is some of this stuff actually induces chronic stress that I was talking about physically, which leads to problems. Okay, right? And the aspect of regular physical activity is again individual dependent. So it is expected that we've heard of people overdoing things and then having a problem there, and that's again overuse again, which is again a source of stress. Right? coming to the study techniques, I think one of the most important things that I wanted to highlight was, and this is based on the AI stuff that I was reading, the last slide, summarizing and underlining. These are considered the least effective methods for learning. I used to do underlining in my time, right? And I used to study because we didn't have Copilot and we didn't have Gemini or ChatGPT, right? But all these, sort of current systems are actually not the ones that are going to help you learn things. They're not going to help you retain things. They're going to give you an understanding, but they're not going to give you a very detailed comprehension of what the models are, right? Or what the nature of the issues are. So veterinary science, for example, if it's physiology, anatomy, and so we're talking about preclinical, paraclinical, clinical stuff, you can get a summary, but when you're actually handling any animals in your workplace, in the professional space, that summary is not going to help you. So you need to know a lot more. So I think it's very important to understand, okay, where is it that I need to use it, what it's going to help me with, rather than actually giving an understanding of my right? But actually, what actually works is something called dividing your targets of learning in a structured manner, and actually working on it more through spacing it out in a systematic way as well. So these are specific learning methods that have demonstrated effectiveness in terms of helping people override that problem of maintaining a large volume of information. And given that we are flooded with information, it becomes even more difficult to retain learners. Right? Okay. The last thing I'm going to talk about is relaxation. Relaxation we can talk about is depending on your stuff that you can see relax. Right? But I'm talking about when someone is stressed. These are techniques that are meant to be used when someone is stressed, not when what they do to help just get a relaxation. Right? You can relax in your lecture by sleeping if you think that works for you. Right? Okay? But that's not the point. The point, what I'm going to say is that I'm not encouraging people to sleep in class. But what I'm going to say is that if that relaxes you, reduces your anxiety about what is being taught, the fact that I can't understand it, the fact that this is going beyond my head, and I'm not going to be able to learn anything from this class or this subject. But if you start having thoughts like that in the middle of the class, it's actually going to be much more stressful for you. So it's better to actually take a break. Right? So it's very important that actually that's what we talk about when we talk about mindfulness. When we talk about mindfulness, we're talking about things that we're focusing on the right here and right now. If you start thinking about all the other and invariably negative aspects that we think about, it's called a bias, right? And that can actually lead us to develop issues with anxiety and extreme distress. Now, the progressive muscle relaxation, I don't know if you can go over it, but that's a method. Again, it's very simple. Some of these things are available and easy to get. These resources are available. You can actually read about them. They're very brief. They're pictorially represented. There are 2-3 ways in which you can just gradually focus and relax your muscles in a manner. Then anxiety situation. In a situation where there is extreme stress. Deep breathing is one strategy, for example, that helps reduce the physiological arousal. So when we talk about mindfulness, we talk about deep breathing, we talk about progressive muscle relaxation, we're talking about how the human physiological, I was talking about the medical model, or the physiological model. These models actually counteract the stress response that your body induces and actually helps reduce the stress, right? Physically. And once you physically, the stress is reduced, automatically your mind becomes more calm, right? Mindfulness works the other way. Because you're concentrating and you're focusing, it actually helps the body relax, and so it works in the opposite way. So we can use these conjunctively, synergistically, in a manner that will help us actually reduce the amount of stress that we're using. Now, coming to what I think is the most pertinent aspect is at an organizational level or this systemic level, what can we do? I think one of the most crucial things as an organization that a lot of organizations are being now encouraged to do is, at the time of joining the course, letting people know what the course means, what's going to happen. Not just them, but their family members, and helping people understand that their expectations, sort of moderating their expectations. It's going to be very demanding, going to be long hours, going to be a lot of hard work. Right? So orientation often, like in orientation, what we have all experienced this, then we want somebody to come and we'll talk about what's their department does and this, that, etc. Nobody says how hard it's going to be, how problematic it's going to be, how challenging it's going to be, how food's terrible, hostels are not that great, conditions, right? And I think it's very important for people to understand. If you're prepared for the worst, you're likely to experience everything pretty okay. Right? You have a worst case scenario, you understand that these are things that are not really, these are the things that you have to expect. These are things that will happen. In the first year, these are the problems that you face. And who's best to talk about? I don't think it's me. Right? It's the second year in my college, my department, the second year MD person who's talking to the first year MD person. Right? You explain to them what problems they face and what are the problems that are facing. Similarly, a final year in my MD program, talking to the second year about the thesis, the completion of thesis, and things like that. And a final year being told by their senior resident, etc. about that. So the mentoring, the aspect of creating systems, and sensitization should be done in a manner that's very logical and continuous. And it doesn't encumber any one cadre of people with the problems. That applies to faculty as well, right? So when you join in as faculty, there's a lot of worry and concern, and senior faculty can be mentors, right? But it's also the junior faculty who are at the same level who can actually help people learn how to adjust and adapt to their department, adjust to the expectations of the department, learn what are the ways to keep up with the department, and what are the sort of areas of specific interests that the department may hold, right? And then what are the sort of people there, so that everybody learns how to handle one another, handle each other more sensitively, more effectively, right? And in a manner that's less likely to induce stress in everyone. So I think it's about being collaborative, inclusive, having that supportive state, right? And also talking about mental health very openly. Right? A lot of us very proudly, at least our age group, my age group, I have high BP or I have diabetes or take medicines for diabetes, etc. But they don't talk about mental health issues. People will never talk about the fact that there's somebody in their family struggles with mental health problems. Right? Because that's stigmatizing. They actually don't. If some of us are, feel confident enough to say that somebody in my family struggles with mental health problem, it might actually foster another person to reach out to them and say, I'm struggling with mental health problem. I need some help. Next, we ask each other about good doctors. I know that it happens even amongst doctors. You call up somebody and say, do you know any good doctor who's an ophthalmologist or cardiologist or whatever, right? So we ask the references why. Because even in the discipline, we want to know who's good in it, right? But then we should be doing that for even mental health issues is what I'm saying, right? We should be able to call up and say, look, I'm looking for a good mental health professional, or a service, or some way to access it. And I think it's about the positive behavior. So when I say reinforcing positive behavior at an institutional level, what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of things that exist beyond assessments and scores of subjects that can actually help people become a lot more, have better outcomes academically. And that is true for things like attendance. Right? Attendance is a problem everywhere in all academic institutions. Right? What is generally considered a good strategy in academic institutions is that you give credits or you give additional bonus marks for people for each stage of attendance that they achieve. Right? So it's not about actually penalizing people for less attendance. It's actually incentivizing more attendance. So you actually say, okay, in this subject, if you were to come for this class, these many classes, you will get bonus 5 marks or 10 marks, about 200. So you're giving them the people chances to actually ramp up their marks and their ability to qualify, and also inducing them to actually come into classes, which is a requirement. But at the same time, rewarding them for those things So, and I think that is one strategy. You can incentivize, you can then, like I said, you can have people say that, we have assessments. There will be 4 assessments in this academic year, right? And then you can say that whoever does 4 assessments and clears the minimum required mark for the assessment, which is 50%, for example, right, gets additional bonus points. People who come for 2, they will only get whatever they expect. So automatically you're incentivizing everyone to get every assessment, right? So what are you doing? You're also helping them foster the idea that, okay, or you say 2 out of 4 will count towards your final scores. So automatically you're giving people less stress by saying, okay, if I give all 4. Or some will say they might be lazy and they might choose, they might be relaxed, they might be very confident, not necessarily lazy, but very confident saying, I'm good, I know my subject, I just need to give 2. Right? I'll give my 2 and I'll get those points. That's up to them. So we give an element of, we give a sense of agency and control to students about their performances, but they also need to be accountable. So they get that through those agencies by way of saying, okay, 2 out of 4 is what we're going to take, but we're going to conduct 4 times. You can take 3 times the exam or 4 times the exam, whatever is the best to make out. If you take 2 only those 2 count. If you take all 4, you may get additional marks. So we put a mix of strategies in place which are constant sources of, sort of academic pressure, because academic pressure is one of the, largest concerns at the academic institutional level that students face. Not just students, but also teachers. The teachers are pressured into finishing their subjects, their guidelines, etc. And everything can't be done, right, by everybody, single. So often what happens is when there is a curriculum and everything has to be done, you start evolving model systems that actually look at adaptive teaching methods. You actually get people to teach, get people to come together and start teaching, rather than, so peers teach one another, rather than somebody taking up one, so that a teacher doesn't teach. The class can be divided into groups, and each group is entrusted with the responsibility of sharing one topic or one subject or one class, right, with the others. So it's not about the entire subject, but on a small area of that. Automatically, what that does is it actually starts diluting the responsibility amongst the group as well as the entire class or batch or whatever, and it helps people work together. It helps people develop academic collaborations, which is very, very important, which we realize much later in life. But in the early stages of our academic career, we don't understand how important it is to be collaborative as students, and we can actually help one another. So, I know my time there were a few people who were very smart. They used to get together to join study. Like, I don't know how many people do that, but there was somebody who joined study, and people used to study together. But they used to not study the same thing. They used to study parts of the same one chapter, and each would then, share that. So it gives a good sort of perspective. So I think coming back to the institutional level, I think it's very important towards that extent. The veterinary college today has taken up this topic. It's very sensitive. Sometimes people think we dismiss it, but we all face it. And it's something that we all face on a day-to-day basis. And it's not going to go away from our lives. We can wish it away, but it's something that's always going to be there. What we can do is work out ways in which we can face it and struggle with it. Not struggle with it, but make our life easier. Right? So the big picture here, right, the workplace environment, these are some steps that some people have come up with, right? This is more for faculty, right? It's about in the workplace how to organize yourself, right? And it's about actually having ways, methods in which, by the way, because I noticed the last bit, 10 is very important, which many of you are deeply committed to at this point in time. So I take that as a signal as well, right? And look to sort of wind up. But I think it is important and it may help. So it's something that we should recognize and acknowledge and say, yeah, fine, fair enough. And then but at the same time we finish our tasks. So allowing for organizational time is always committing some time every day to set up what you need to do, clean out. It's like cleaning out the waste. we actually send away stuff and clean out our inboxes, whatever. So we set aside, say, every day half an hour to remove all unnecessary emails, messages, etc. It's like sort of a cleaning out, cleaning your mind, but decluttering your electronic space as well, digital space as well, right? That's very important. So ultimately, it's a, this I think would in a way just give you an overarching overview of what I'm trying to convey. I know it's been a long session, so I'm going to wind up now. But essentially, it's about looking at understanding people. And empathy basically means understanding people from their context and not your people. And so it's about looking at how all of this plays a big part in stress and alleviating stress. These are the crucial things that will help relieve a lot of that stress and help overall improve health. Right? This is just about the suicide prevention strategy that the World Health Organizations proposed. It's called the Live Life approach. And one of the most crucial things you certainly read is inform the young. So one of the main targets is about critical interventions in suicide prevention as per the WHO, working with the young, which is pretty much everybody in academia. And I think that's one of the most crucial things. Right? Training and education and access to healthcare, awareness raising and addressing stigma is what I was focusing on. And I talk about the entire, ways in which suicide prevention works. Right? By the way, there are very few countries which have a national suicide prevention strategies. In India is one of them. Right? And 49 standalone ones, and there's WHO website is actually the suicide prevention strategies. So a lot of these tips and strategies are focusing on that. Right? And there are priorities. So I'd just like to wind up by saying a lot of times just changing the narrative of it can change perspective. So it's about understanding stress and understanding distress. Right? Realizing that it is going to be there. It's about us working together, working with one another, and working in different innovative methods, and keeping up with the times. That will help change our perspectives. Thank you so much.
Any questions from the audience, please? Any problems in fact sir from Maths, President Kumar sir? So all are happy, sir, no problems here.
So I know many of you have various forms of stresses. You should be you should add a little courage with you and reach out. So maybe we can consider this as a part of the exercise. Anyone? Because once you pass out, the exam fear, exam stresses will always be there. But how you cope up is important. But anything else you want to add up or ask questions?
You can always blend with somebody else. So you don't need to talk for yourself. You can always say that I need something. You don't even need to name it. So generally what we say is that it may be something that may have nothing to do with you or genuinely. But you may want to be curious to know that you read something somewhere in the newspaper or something elsewhere and then you want to understand about whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So, is it okay now?
Mike.
their stress. I would probably say that, you know, it's, so I would probably say that the issue is not about more or less. What appears more to someone may appear less to someone else, and may appear, you know, average to somebody else. So what I'm trying to say is that the measure of what is defined as more is relative. So for me, when I can do one task, if someone else is doing 3 tasks, that's considered more. If I'm not being able to, I'm doing 2 tasks, and I do one task, it may appear less. So it's just a question of what is defined as more for that person. And I don't think it's got to do with, you know, not getting tired. I think it's just that people work in different methods and ways. Some people may do a lot of activity, fulfill a lot of their responsibilities in not a short span of time, but in a certain period of time. Others may break it down into parts, but ultimately the outcomes are the same. They both end up finishing their tasks. And that is the bottom line. And I think that should be the sort of focus rather than understanding about something else. So we all have our own strategies and how we may choose to fulfill those tasks.
So what I feel in response to the question raised by Dr. Umashankar, there can be some individuals who could be delivering the goods by considering their passion, their work or their profession itself as a passion. They may not feel strenuous at all. And whenever something is actually imposed to be done by an individual by force, they may not be really interested. Within some time they feel very strenuous and then the outcome may not be that productive. This is what I just feel. And then keep changing our activities. Depending on our passion, you never feel strenuous. Maybe someone is good in music, someone is good in painting. To the third person, the person who is actually delivering the goods, they are under the impression that this person is very much strenuous. In reality, that may not be. The person may be really enjoying whatever that person does.
I think again, like I said, it's about adaptation. So a lot of times we may get into something that we think that we wish to do, and we suddenly find that it's something that's way beyond our capacity. Right? A lot of times, a lot of students get into courses that they aspire to, but when they get into the course, they realize this is too much. It's just not something that they can manage, right? Because there is a certain, they thought at an early stage in their life, at an early stage in their life, that's what they do, right? But when the reality sets in, a lot of times, and that is probably the majority of students experience that. I would not say it's the minority, the majority across all disciplines. And a lot of them adapt. They find out methods in which they find certain areas that they enjoy, they focus on, and then they start acquiring strength and adjust to the demands of that course and complete it. Others may say, no, this is just not it. I don't wish to do it, and they move on to the lateral course. Some finish the course. For example, it will apply to veterinary medicine as well. I know for a fact that, like I said, some may become clinicians, some may become researchers, some may become academics, right? Some may be a combination of everything, right? In medicine, for example, some join the pharma companies. They have nothing to do with treating patients. So they are advisors, or they are involved in developing drugs or medications. Some people become HR, get into the HR industry or the HR post after medicine, and they actually are hospital administrators. So they have no role to play in medicine, they may not be seeing again patients. So the question is that some of them may actually use their experience with medicine and completely take on a completely different course. So everybody who joins medicine may not necessarily finally become a doctor. And everybody who becomes somebody after finishing medicine, they say, I want to be a cardiologist. But if you talk to a lot of specialists, they will say that what they are doing is not what they intended to initially start with. But they are doing it very well and they are doing it successfully. So it's about adjusting and becoming identified. Suddenly you realize that you might be very, very good at something that you never thought you would do. So you need to recognize that skill, and that can only come with opportunities.
have established their entrepreneurs as entrepreneurs, established a private clinical practice. So sometimes the doctors itself face criticism from the owners on our practice, and also in that point of view, what step or what take a doctor should take to be empathetic towards the owner and to himself also, because this is getting down towards self-criticism. I am not worthy enough. That questions are rising.
I think that's very, I think it becomes important to get that peer input. That's what I said about the peer, sort of peer, guidance, because a lot of people may not necessarily be working the same organization. They may be working in different organizations but having the same goal with a similar expectation. They might be doing certain tips. There could be certain tips that most people can give you, your peers, your batchmates who are working in other places, and they can tell you what they have done. There can be 5 people you talk to. You might find 1 or 2 of them are saying things that might you can apply. You have to try. It's about testing through trying, seeing whether that works, and then coming to some middle ground that meets the requirements of the roles and responsibilities, and also fulfills your sort of expectations from that game. So you cannot get 100%, and your life should not be your identity should not be driven by your profession alone. So it's very important to identify that your identity, your profession is a part of your identity, not that you are your profession is your identity.
And now we feel that even though we have 24 hours, it's like 10 minutes. We feel that we don't have time to do that.
Yes.
Previously it was not like that. Before 10 years, when we go back to our 10 years, it was not like
Yeah, I think
so.
that's again a very
broaden this thing.
very good question. I think I think people right now say that 24 hours is very short and very less. And I think it's true. Things are moving so rapidly or so fast that it wasn't the case. Things were much more relaxed 10 years ago, two decades ago, 20 years ago. I would say probably that it's again a question of perspective. If you go back and talk to the people who were in your situation 20 years ago, they will say that 10 years ago I can confidently say, just calculating. So I'm just saying, at least 15 years ago there's a dial-up modem. Any of you experience the dial-up modem for connecting to the internet? I don't think. Most wouldn't know what a dial-up modem is. Please go and check to connect to the internet what the process was. And 20 years ago, the time taken to actually get one article or one chapter in a library would be very difficult, because that book would be out issued to some other student. So you would not be able to read that chapter or read that article because it's with somebody else. Right? So you have to wait physically for that article. So while it may appear that things have become instantaneous, right? At that time people had to go multiple times to get the same item, or find alternate methods, make xeroxes of textbooks. I don't know how many of you are addicted to, I don't think those existed. Yeah, so now it's all online, right? So it's, I think a lot of times if you talk to people from that time, they will say that they envy the circumstances that exist now for youngsters. They may say that we have to walk, travel, we have to source information from different places, we have to put a lot of time. And that in itself was such a Herculean task. So while there was something had to be submitted as an assignment, I could not get the information to read to submit my assignment. So it's a very, very different, sort of perspective.
So, as a part of our clinical practice, we would be stressed, and at the same time we need to take critical judgments, critical decisions regarding the patient. So how can we balance this thing? And also we are in a juncture in our career to choose the paths. So any tips for having a better decision making to what to choose?
Yeah,
Taking decisions.
Yeah, I think that you need to again talk to your collegiate seniors. You need to look at reflect upon your own strengths I think it's very important to remember that, again, like I said, it's about what we may think we like, what we think we are good at, but what we are actually good at, sometimes our teachers and mentors can tell us. If we go back to one of our teachers or our guides, and they will give you a perspective of what they feel that you're good at. So I think a lot of times recognizing one's own ability, you have to get feedback from others. And then understand, okay, I might be good at this, but this is what I aspire to. And there could be a mismatch there. That can cause induced stress. So it's about making some compromises in certain areas to understand that I have to compromise this to achieve this. So it will never be 100% good or 100% bad. It may be 60 or 70% good, 30% bad, it might be 60-40. But nonetheless, it's still, there is a significant proportion that's good. And that's what should be a measure. So a measure is driven by not an absolute 100 and 0, but by relative, advantages and disadvantages to that decision or that period.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sense of humor, how it, I think definitely we know that it helps in reducing stress. So please, your views on it.
Humor, yes, absolutely. Not just humor, I would say. A lot of people feel relaxed after watching a lot of, soap operas are very famous, drama shows are very famous, and so it's just about what relaxes you. Relaxation can be achieved not necessarily through humor, it can be achieved through watching intense drama, thrillers. So it depends on the content that you consume that helps you relax. So it's again finding what you find. Humor is obviously something. Now there is a lot of debate and controversy and that about what is considered humor. What might be something that I find funny, somebody else may find very insulting. So now it's become a sensitive matter in itself, humor. So it's not very easy to find content that makes everyone laugh. There's always someone who's offended. So I would say that, I think it's very important to remember that it's not just about humor. Any type of, recreational activity that relaxes you is something that would be useful for reducing and eliminating a lot of stress.
Just like Charlie Chaplin.
Yeah, I can assure you a lot of people did not necessarily enjoy Charlie Chaplin now. There were not me, but there were a lot of people who did. There are a lot of people who probably, a lot of it, if you look at it now, may not be appropriate. A lot of people might say a lot of that humor was not appropriate. And so it's important that we understand the sensitivities as well.
Thank you, sir. If you have lunch,
my last question would be on, for the sake of the students, what should be a point where professionals and graduates pass out, or even before during the graduate studies, what should be the point where they should feel that they should reach for help, medical help? What are those indicators that they should know that, okay, now this is the time I should go and seek help?
Yeah, a lot of times, I think a lot of times those indicators may not be necessarily recognized by the person who's actually struggling. It's about their friends and dear ones who are close to them who need to recognize those signs, like I told you, warning signs. The warning signs are the things that people need to recognize. It's about losing temper easily when a person never used to do that. So they get very angry, they have a lot of outbursts, they get very, very deeply disturbed, they have mood swings, they're very calm, some people have explosive behaviors, they find that they're having trouble falling asleep, they're not able to sleep a lot of the time, they're not able to concentrate, attention and concentration and focus is impaired, they're not able to remember things that they used to. Most importantly, people find that a lot of things that they used to enjoy, they're not able to enjoy. Stuff that used to give them pleasure, happiness, joy, suddenly isn't inducing that happiness and sense of joy and fulfillment. And those are the warning signs internally. But I think what is very important is a lot of times people are struggling. A lot of us struggle. a lot of us hold back and don't reach out for help. So it's about the stigma. It's about being worried and being judged. That is a concern. So that's why I said that it's about the peer group that is open, welcoming, non-judgmental, listens, and actually supports the person and gets them to get help. And look, reaches out and says, look, I'm worried for you. You don't see yourself. Right? I think it might be, worthwhile doing a meeting something. I'm happy to come along with you. Right? Because they're hesitant to go by themselves. So it's actually encouraging and supporting one another as students. That is of great value. Rather than assuming that person himself will take on that responsibility. Because they may not be in a state of mind to help themselves, even to reach out for help. Right? So that's why I highlighted the teleman's number, because that's something that's easily accessible, and that person can guide you. So that's a confidential call, so it's a lot of difference. Please make use of resources, get aware of resources. I think the college can do a lot by just making awareness about all the resources that exist online and the system that overcome the challenges of distance, travel, time, and makes help easily accessible.
Thank you, sir. Now I request our Dean sir and our AD Prabhu sir to honor the guest. He has given 5th lecture service and it was very useful for the staff and students.
Good afternoon. Yes, one more. It was a very wonderful lecture on stress management. One small question. Thank you so much for your appreciation.
Before asking question.
Yeah, this is 27th year of my teaching experience. Still I have a lot of inhibitions to come to this stage and face you. Of course, it may be common with many people. And I consider this lecture was too brief for me. I wanted him to continue for hours together. Hardly we get opportunity to interact with such type of people from a very reputed deemed university, Nimans. All of us have to make use. I wanted to feel like asking question. Again, there was some inhibition, inherent inhibition. I was keeping quiet. Luckily, I got chance to come here. Now I am a bit comfortable. Now I will ask the question. Is stress inevitable? If so, how to manage the progress and the stress together? So it is a problem for students and our fellow colleagues in the teaching, research and extension activities. And also, there are few people with us, they are supporting. In the supporting role, they are technicians and in many different roles in this institute. Put together all, I want him to give one simple solution. How to manage stress and progress together. And one more thing I wanted to share with my experience. Our students really struggle, sir, to get admission here. There are only few seats, hardly 500. And the whole state and even from other states, they have to compete. With merit only they have to come here. After joining, I am observing that they are not able to manage their merit. they are not able to manage it. It is in the declining trend, sir. I used to observe more than 50% used to score 80 and above. That is not my observation. I may be having lacunae, I may not be very good in attracting their attention. There are lacunae from our side also. But still, this is one common observation I am advising our students. Stress is not going to end. There will be one or the other type of stress. To get admission, then to get good score, then to job, then to progress in the profession, satisfactory family life, society life. So it is not going to end. Sir, I am taking more time. I will stop here. Please, sir, give your solution, sir. Suggestions.
I think Sir pretty much summarized it very well when he said that he's been here, gets onto this team and still feels stressed after so many years of teaching, right? So stress is inevitable, and I think what is most important is how we manage it, and it is something that he highlighted. So it'll take many more hours, and I will get stressed by that time. So I think it is an ongoing discussion that we should have. I completely agree. It's not a one-off. I don't think we should have just an hour and a half, just a discussion where I talk and others don't get really too many opportunities, but have chances where we have more, sessions where people have the freedom to discuss. People feel, wherein they don't feel necessarily judged. Probably have it in smaller groups with people from similar, in similar circumstances in terms of, in an academic institution, it could be students, small batches of students. It can be teachers separately, because teachers' problems can be different from students' problems. First year's problems can be different from final year's problems. And so all these are very, very important. And so I think the only way to do that is have systems in the college that permit and encourage such discussions, support such discussions, have a supportive system created across all levels. And like Sir said very clearly, it's not just about professional life, it's not about academic life, it's about personal life, it's about family life. There are so many other areas of, areas that need to be, wherein we may want and seek satisfaction, or these could be sources of stress. So somebody could be very highly academically achieving, a very proficient teacher or academician, but they may be struggling in their personal lives. Their child could be suffering from a health problem, or their wife or that. So there could be a variety of different things that we may not be aware of. So that person has to deal with that in a manner through their support systems that they have. And it could be colleagues and friends. So I think it's important that we continue this conversation and break it up into small sessions that are continuously present, and not necessarily me. It's not me having to come from demands, but the college in itself constitutes, a periodic method in which these are addressed continuously on an ongoing basis through a variety of, senior and junior faculty who all participate and get involved, as well as alumni, so that they all work together towards the well-being of students. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. So just I take just 1 minute my experience. So I think that Vishnu and all, Dr. Kshama, if they agree, we had a very tough time. Prime Minister system, 3 months. So I think first phase, anonymous phase, midterm and final. 4 exams in 3 months. So it was very hectic and it was very stressful actually. Now I think annual system, you are lucky. So best thing, I think humor. Have friends who cut jokes, have fun. So it should not be too fun also, but you need fun and humor. So always don't take very serious. You should be serious, but I think you should not be serious. I think one of our classmates other day he came, Dr. Gopal Reddy. So always humor, spontaneous, no textbook or no film jokes. So always used to be humor, spontaneous. 1 or 2 just example I will give. So he will just tell, okay, good night, same to me. So he spontaneous joke. So there is nothing in the textbook. He himself will tell, okay, see you tomorrow, he will tell, okay, same to me, he will tell. So spontaneous. So that again he will not repeat that joke. So And so he was very cool, and he never took any tension, and he took I think 7 years I think. He took 7 years, 5 years course, and he did not repent now also. What happened in our birth statistics course, exam started, he was just 5 minutes late. So teacher, I think his teacher, GKVK professor, so he was just 5 minutes late. Teacher told, okay, get out. And he could have requested, sorry sir, 5 minutes, some bus late and all. That time the railway track was there, Nepal railway track. Sometime train, no, that block means 10 minutes gone. He could have pleaded, teacher would have allowed. Okay sir, thank you. He went away. So one exam gone is gone. That time, there are no, later only all these things came, this non-load, reputation, this exam. Otherwise, in our time, when you missed the exam, gone, that marks. So he went and he did not repent now also. 1 year gone, but he repeated the course. So now also, he is very cool, suddenly he cut jokes. In Venice, same person, Gopaladi, now also, he was my neighbor. I used to go to his room for just humor, making jokes. So in Venice, what happened? So he was very casual person, he was not very serious of knowing things. Very casual, very going here and there. So, just like the film, no, what is it? Munnabai. Yeah. So, in one clinic, what happened? See, case history was to record. So, what skin problem? So, what shampoo you are using, what soap you are using, how often you are giving bath to the dog and all, he was collecting. So I was collecting, he just, he will go everywhere, go collecting, and what. So what soap he was using, that I was asking, that owner, that he is using, he is a local dog, he is using, sir, Mamul soap, sir, Mamul soap, Mamul sir, Mamul means routine, now he is not there, it is Mamul brand, he has, see, suddenly owner, different, so Mamul is the brand of soap, where is available? So like this, so he was always spontaneous person. So in our batch, I think that Vishnu will agree. So in our All India tour, so we enjoyed all the. So in All India tour, we never carried any his clothes. So one T-shirt he purchased in Bombay, in Delhi it is gone. Delhi. So always used to tell, he is from Bellary. I am a Bellary Vetico. In first year only, he will tell, I am a Bellary Vetico. Hey, Andrew Bellary Vetico, raise hands. So spontaneous. One class, our Pandran Shetty, one medicine professor was there. To be frank, he was not a good teacher. So, the students used to be, but don't repeat this to any of your teachers. So what happened? After half an hour, no, we used to get bored. So suddenly, sir, enough sir, sir, enough sir. So then he used to, and again he will continue. So then enough sir, enough sir, enough sir. So then again there is a pin drop silence. So then the Gopura he stood up, sir, seriously enough. So the teacher got offended. So he just took his notes and went away. So then all the day, thank you, Reddy. So like that, sometimes some part of humor is required. Thank you so much.
Thank our dean sir to making the students humor and also to last but not the least, vote of thanks. I thank our respected dean for arranging this 5 days lecture and this today's lecture. Sir, thank you very much on behalf of faculty forum. Thank you, sir. And I thank our respected speaker today. He has given very good information. Actually, it was very informative. Time is shortage. We have faculty, as a faculty, we have still more questions, but I think we can arrange some other day. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for coming all the way to college. Thank you. I would like to thank our professor and head of the department who participated here. Thank you very much, sir. And also, I thank organizing secretaries, Dr. Mahesh and Dr. Ranjan, they have taken risk to arrange this. I would like to thank all faculty members present here, and also I would like to extend my thanks to our students who have come here and gained so much knowledge from all the speakers here. So thank you very much. And at the end, we have a tea and snacks arranged. Please have the tea and go in a queue. Thank you very much.